super excited for this episode, Miss Adi Levanon.
Thank
You
you
know,
so much.
we've talked during COVID for a while. It was a great episode. I asked you a lot of questions about, how you should pitch a VC, and we really went into that. But you've been doing many different things after our interview. You did kind of a shift, right?
Has it been 2 years?
I think it's been more than 2 years.
Wow, which is
Yeah,
nuts. Yeah, well, thank you for reaching out again, and it's fun to. We were talking before. It's fun to meet in person,
it is.
so it's nice to do that after to see somebody's actually like you're tall. All
Yes,
these
I'm
things that
6'2", yeah.
that I didn't know from looking at a Zoom screen. Yeah, I mean, of course, things shifted through COVID, after COVID, and yeah, professionally, a lot of things have changed, which is it's exciting.
So you left a very traditional VC, opened up your own Selah Ventures. Uh, what was the move all about?
I mean, anything that you anything that you start, it's never just like a, spur of the moment kind of thing. This is something that I've it's funny. One of my friends that I've been friends with her for now 20 years. She's like, I remember the day that we sat on Rothschild Boulevard, like 20 something years or 15 years ago, and you said one day you want to have your own fund, and that was like a dream that you had. And here we are, the number of years later, and it was just the right thing to do at the right time. So I mean, to your point, like when we spoke, I was then working at VC fund that was it's a U.S. based fund, but with offices in Israel and focusing on Israel, Europe, and the U.S. And I was the person here on the ground. And I mean, in general, I've been doing investments for over a decade, both in Israel and in the U.S. In New York, I was New York based for a couple of years, and it's been like a journey where at some point I realized that working in venture is incredible, and learning from other amazing partners and general partners, how they do it, how they manage a fund, how they invest, what they look at. I'm so grateful for everybody that I worked with. I've also worked with individuals like single LPs in different funds that I worked for, and so I really learned a lot. But I also realized that as you grow within this industry, it's also you're not going to bring in as a junior VC. You don't get to do all the investments that you think you should do in the fund. And
Right.
that's okay. That's just the way it goes. In the end of the day, you don't bring on somebody junior to make the decisions. That's fine. You bring them for help. You bring them for, support, deal flow, all the other things that they can be helpful with. But along the years, I realized that I actually, did pinpoint and recognize really good opportunities really early on, that I thought we should invest in. And then over the years, I realized that these companies became extremely successful. And so I think that was like a light switch in my mind that not only do I enjoy doing this, not only do I actually realize over time that I have an entrepreneurial mindset. I think I've always had it. I just didn't, sometimes you need like a kick to get there. And so, doing this over a decade, building a portfolio of investments that have been successful that I've done at the funds I've worked for, but I also started doing some kind of angel investing to build my ghost portfolio to really kind of prove out.
That was before Selah?
That was
Or
yes.
during
No,
this?
before.
Okay, before. Okay.
I made 6 personal investments, one of them into a company, that's super billion-dollar company, another one exited. And so I'm well aware that the most important thing in venture is returns and all, having substantial, what we call, DPI, TVPI, those are the most important things. But I realized that I've been able to really recognize and get access to really good deals very early on. And so that's why I wanted to, and this is a long answer, but I wanted to kind of prove that I could do that on my own in a way through these angel investments. And then taking all that into consideration is what led me to finally go out and raise the fund to really continue doing what I've been doing for over a decade, but kind of take what I've done and prove like, this is what I've done. I'm on paper right now with one exit recently, which is Dig Security that was sold to Palo Alto Networks. It's 14x multiple on invested capital, which is great on paper, but I understand that it is on paper. But I figured that, if I wanted to prove that I can then take this to the next level and at scale and hopefully, bring that from the fund level as well.
So in terms of what's the background like, what's the background LPs like in Selah Ventures? Who are they? Is it like institutionals, a combination?
No, so it's a good question. I mean, for fund my side, so the target is $15 million fund. I've raised majority of that at this point, nearly 12, and made 6 investments. So institutionals don't touch, those type of funds. I have spoken to many institutionals because, just like any growth stage fund, they want to meet startups early on to hopefully invest down the
Right.
line. Institutionals do the same. But no, LPs are a mix of really like funds that have an interest in actually like investing in smaller funds. There's a lot of that nowadays. GPs at large funds, family offices, high net worth individuals, operators, founders. So really, really a mix. With the idea really being is they see me kind of as like the scout on the ground for a lot of the things that they want to do. I love co-investing with my LPs and the general network. Part of my approach, a big part of my approach and who I am as a person is to be really collaborative.
Selah is mainly focused on fintech, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, so Selah Ventures is a, pre-seed, seed, kind of first check fintech focused fund with a really broad definition of what fintech is, also based on just how fintech is expanding in general.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's
So fintech is, when you say fintech, do you include blockchain stuff and crypto stuff as well?
Yep, definitely. I look at fintech. So for me, I have like thesis areas. I try to be a very thesis driven investor, even within the context of fintech. But definitely one of my thesis areas, I call it the transfer of ownership. And so to me, that's like, what is ownership and what do you owner and what do you owner of? What is the asset? So a lot of things, obviously in Web3, whether it's infrastructure or, DeFi and the lend smart contracts, I definitely look at that as part of that thesis area. And then also transfer of ownership, I put things around like the transfer of wealth. But under that category, for sure, definitely I want to look at things in the blockchain space. Personally, I'm an investor in a company called Tweed. I don't mind giving the plug because they're great, 2 female founders. It was backed by Excel and now Andreessen. So definitely things that I also want to do on the fund level, for sure.
Does the Selah have any equity in blockchain type stuff?
So that's what I want to do.
Oh, so that's part of...
Yeah. No.
Okay, I thought it was a personal...
It is. So Tweed
okay.
was the last personal investment I've done. But yes, to your question, I definitely want to do more things in the blockchain space. I don't see enough. I just think because, you need to... I think most people expect you to only do Web3 when you do Web3 in a way. And I do, again, fintech so broadly. But I definitely, if anybody listening, any founders in the space, I 100% want to do more things in the Web3 space, for sure.
What type of like other fintech niches do you find attractive nowadays?
Oh, again, a lot. So to me, fintech is, it's broad, and I like that it's broad. And that's why when people, think like, oh, you only do payments, I think like also specifically in Israel, fintech is looked at, I think, a little bit too narrowly. But if you go, if you speak to like, and I've had conversations with, David Haber, who is a general partner at Andreessen Horowitz, and he's doing fintech. Like he's saying, I love it because I get to invest almost in anything. And it's true.
Everything has financial tech inside of it in some way or the other, right?
Well, I think it was Angela Strange from Andreessen that said, fintech is everything. And so to me, when I look at fintech, it's definitely the typical kind of where fintech started out in many ways, like was called the unbundling of the bank. So in general, it's like taking different services, different financial services that were handled by financial institutions and unbundling them, whether that's payments, lending, wealth management, capital markets, insurance. It could be anything in the world of like banking, and all of that can be digitized and customized outside of the institution in many ways. And that's the fintech that we've seen in the past few years mainly. But we're broadening it, I think, now into something that for a lot of people doesn't necessarily seem like fintech. And so if you're building something that's actually based on fraud and identity, or you're building something based on, how do you govern data or handle privacy, or how do you handle just basic infrastructure, even cloud-related technologies, and how do you save money and how are you more efficient? All of that technology can then be sold into a financial organization, be it financial institution, bank, insurer, or enterprise, other large fintechs and SMBs. And so to me, that's like the enhancement of these different organizations through these different technologies and services, which end up being fintech. You may not think of a lot of the data companies that we see as fintechs, but if their main go-to-market, or these fraud companies, right? If their main go-to-market was to financial institutions, that in my mind makes them 100% a fintech. And so that's why I think also when we look at the definition of fintech and a lot of these like, reports and maps of what is fintech, in Israel we say it's fintech. Some people will say fintech is second to cyber. I disagree. From what I'm seeing also from the data, even before I started Selah Venture, I looked at, in Israel we have IVC, which is Israel VC. I think it's called just Israel VC. It's like the database, right? It's sorry that I'm forgetting the actual terminology behind it, but it's like the PitchBook or Crunchbase of local data. And I asked them before I even started the fund, I'm like, can you look at a few years back at new cyber companies, new fintech companies? Because my assumption was there's more fintech than cyber, and I was right. And also SNC, Startup Nation Central, put out a report in 2023, which was like, a difficult year for multiple reasons. And still, you see more fintech companies than cyber.
Really?
Yeah. 450 something, I believe, and cyber was like a little bit less. So it's either the same or more. And now the difference is the amount of capital that's been invested over the past few years. But
the amount of basically liquidity movement, and movements like in the money market, right? Like liquidity events, those kind of stuff.
But that's the thing. I think from what I've seen also over the years, and I've checked this out too, M&A deals in fintech that have happened and will continue happening. And if you look at the median, not the average, the median, which disregards, the big $1 billion, let's say, acquisitions, you still have anything between, let's say, 400 to 500 million would be the size of M&As for fintech versus cyber, which is majority has been less. I'm not talking about Talon, and those were very big. And there's actually more $1 billion Israeli fintech companies than there are $1 billion cyber companies. Yep. People don't know that, but yeah,
that's very interesting.
There's about 20, if not more than 20, Israeli-founded $1 billion fintechs, and there's about 18, I believe, somebody told me, in cyber.
There's
in the past few years.
Like I think it was probably like 3 years ago. I wrote an article for Forbes about the fintech boom. About I think literally the title was "Is fintech the next cyber?" I don't know. You guys can check it out on my Forbes page, but like it was something like that. And I remember back then I interviewed for that article. I talked to Dovi Francis from Group 11, and like we were like there's so many sexy fintech Israeli brands, Tipalti and Next Insurance, and like
there's a ton.
And Lemonade. Like there was so many.
Fireblocks, BioCatch, Unit.
Right.
There's like so many.
Because like the guys in the mainstream tech scene, when you talk about fintech, they immediately think about like 5 or 6 brands, and they think about like Klarna, they think about Checkout.com, they think about Revolut, right? Like, so like they think about like, okay, the future of banking, but they don't think about all the other components that fintech has inside of them.
Again, I think that's the difference maybe between how the U.S. looks at fintech and I think locally in Israel, because in Israel fintech in general is young. As a theme, there have been many companies over the years that were fintech companies but didn't necessarily fall under that category.
Right.
Like I remember I worked at a fund called Fintech Collective when I moved to New York. We were investing out of Fund One. They're now, I think they have nearly $1 billion in AUM. They're doing very well. Great guys. And I remember back then, part of like the pitch was like only in 2014 you started seeing Google search terms, what is fintech? So really it was like just a growing theme for the past decade. So it's obvious that in Israel it's in general young. It's even younger in many ways here locally in the Israeli ecosystem. So I'm not surprised that when people think here of fintech, they think, okay, payments companies. They think of like Payoneer or eToro or
PayPal,
but either they're global companies or Israeli founded ones, but there's just a lot more, again, based on what I said before of like, who are you selling into? Who is your go-to-market?
I had a conversation with someone who, I don't remember who that was, but he was someone in the fintech space. And he told me, like, do you know what, like, he said something very similar to what you said, that like fintech is a new theme, but it existed for a long time.
Right.
And then he mentioned that he felt that like fintech started with Bloomberg. When Bloomberg started doing they started building their infrastructure for trading.
Yep.
He felt that was like the start of fintech.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And there were a lot of companies that were taking, again, components of, it was mainly about money movement in the past.
Right.
Mainly. And now, you look back, and again, I've written about this too. I wrote about fintech and Israeli fintech in 2018. I wrote about it in TechCrunch in 2021. I've been following this. I've been doing fintech investing since 2015. Again, I've been really lucky to get into it really early on and work with such amazing GPs in the US. But really, when you think about it, they're I don't know, it's been growing beyond money movement now, much more into infrastructure, the back end, companies that are more focused on connectivity between financial institutions and banks and companies. So we're really expanding, and it's still so incredible that we're now only at like 2%. Fintech is now constitutes 2% of global financial services revenues, and we're only, I think, in 2030, the data says that we're going to get to 7%, and that's 1.5 trillion. So just like, do you understand the gap is still so big? And even within payments, I can't believe it, but like people are like, oh, I don't know if there's still anything more to innovate within payments. Still today, most businesses wait 20% of the month to get their money. Why? So there's companies now trying to close, focus on closing that gap. But when you realize that there's still so much pain within an industry that seems, everything's been done, there's still so much left to do. And that's why I'm so excited, and specifically excited about Israeli founders building in this world.
So let's talk a little bit about Israeli founders, or maybe about founders in general that you talk to. What's an attractive founder?
I'll say the cliche things and then go like a little bit deeper, because in many ways, I mean, I'm kind of like a therapist at this point to a lot of, I think it's my personality and also the type of teams that I get drawn to. But I think obviously, considering what I am investing in, I definitely want folks, and you see this nowadays, folks that have actual fintech expertise. Either they grew within other fintech companies or grew within other financial institutions. They're coming with an understanding of the complexity, what it is to build a product that is in a regulatory world. They take that into consideration from day one. So having, first of all, that founder market fit is really crucial to me.
Domain expertise.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that when you think about, again, how fintech is involved, and even Israeli fintech, you could see in the past, founders that didn't come from the domain, they got experts around the table to help them. I think you can still build a successful business that way, but I think that now we're at the point where after, again, 20 different $1 billion Israeli founded fintech companies, you have a lot of new companies with that expertise, domain expertise, and et cetera. So yes, that definitely is important. I definitely look also at the team dynamics. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of finding team members that it's not anymore. I was just talking to ideating folks that I met yesterday. It's not just about finding somebody who completes you. It's not. There has to be a dynamic where you openly disagree and you openly talk about it, and everything is okay, right, the next day. And it's okay if there's, you need to be able, just like I think in any relationship, right? We all want, in Hebrew we say like, peace at home, right? In Hebrew we say shalom bayit, right? To have peace at home. You need to have that peace also with your partners. But it really comes down to, can we disagree in a way where we grow from it? And I think I meet so many teams are like, yeah, we've been working together the past 2 months or 3 months. And I ask them, okay, have you guys argued yet? Have you had an argument? What does that look like? Is it good? And it sounds silly, but it's really not, because unfortunately down the line, there comes so many complexities in the growth of a company. And so I really care to see that they understand what each one is doing, how they interact with each other, how do they deal with not only when everything's great, but when things don't go as well as planned or don't go as planned. So that's like, I think the typical, team dynamics need to make sense, founder market fit, obviously. And then from a personal level, what's always been really attractive, I think, in any founder I've met with is like 2 really important things: having really high conviction, but also having humility. And here, maybe some will disagree with me on that, but I think that it's really important. And on one hand is that you're going to build something. Nobody can tell you it's not right. Nobody can tell you something that you don't know. You know what you want to build. You understand the market you're looking at. You have all the answers. It's great. But you're humble enough that when you don't have all the answers, you can say, listen, I'm not sure. But because you have such good conviction, you'll say, but here's how I think we're going to figure it out. So it's like, and maybe that means also not just conviction, but you have such a good understanding of the market that you have a plan.
Or that you're fast, no? You're
also,
able to...
Yeah, of course, that's
right.
I mean, execution driven is like a given, right? Like if you're not executing, then I'm going to recognize it pretty fast and I'm not going to want to invest. I mean,
how do you recognize that? I tell you why, because we work with at this point, I've been, we've been, my company's been integrated with maybe 200 startups. Yeah. And... some of them are not able to execute.
Of course, but there's a hunger.
Some of them have been funded really heavily and are not able to execute.
That's also a problem. There's something about, lean startup wasn't just like a fictional hoo-hoo thing, and there's something about not everything needs to be extremely difficult, but you need to be able to build with limited resources. You need to be able to prove that the market wants what you're trying to sell, and that people are willing to pay for it and work on it. And so how do I recognize it? I mean, I've seen in most of the funds I've worked for, I brought in the majority of deal flow. Like, I don't know if they would like me to say that, but that's the truth. And I hustle and I work hard, and I've met so many different types of founders. And when they started off until they became billion-dollar fintech companies or founders or sold companies, and there's an inherent drive that you see and you cannot ignore. And so when I ask founders a lot of the questions, so it's like, what do they want to build? How are they going to do it? Ask what the plan is. There's just something there's this, it's more than a passion. You can see also, like, even in the pre-seed nowadays, when they're just thinking about what they want to do, they're already out there validating the idea.
Like talking to 200 people at a time, talking to the ICP already before the actual product.
Yep. And that means a lot. I mean, like, you can tell the difference. You can really tell the difference. And so, yeah, I think to answer the question, it's like, I want to see the conviction. I want to see that humility, which I think is so important as you're building a business. Like, like, have full conviction, confidence. Be humble also about knowing what you don't know and being open to listen to others. But you have to have the plan, which I think will show that conviction, and it will show the knowledge and the drive. Like, that's what always gets me excited in the founders I invest in.
What's your idea about the Rockstar founder, the Adam Neumanns, the Jack Dorseys, the Travis Kalaniaks?
They are incredible storytellers too. Incredible storytellers.
When we look at data, so like obviously we're a media company, so we're completely biased, right? But still, when we try to do objective data, we always find out that the most front-facing, aggressive / assertive, some people call aggressive people aggressive, some people call them assertive. It's the point of view kind of thing.
Right.
But like, we saw that is very, very beneficial for a successful startup.
To be aggressive?
To be assertive. A front-facing rock star founder.
Look, I think that's like, part of the conviction when I say
it's you can be like conviction, I guess. It can be on both angles. It could be someone who is like very convicted, but he's not constantly doing interviews, podcasts, thought leadership, being front facing. And then you have people who know that the media plays a crucial part in how their company is going to be leveraged compared to competitors.
I think that, so again, the names you like, to me, that's why I say humility, because I think that I would rather work with like humble founders versus the opposite. But I do think, I'm a very assertive person. I'm very tenacious. I don't give up. You don't go and build your own fund if you're not somebody who has high conviction.
Yeah. You literally have to be to do the thing.
But you have to have that high conviction, and that high conviction needs to be, to your point, you can't do it by staying at home and and being behind the scenes. You need to be open. You need to go to podcasts. You need to write. You need to be active, and you need to be able to tell your story well. And you need to be smart enough to recognize that if your story isn't resonating through the feedback you're getting, then go and change it and go twitch, 100%. Like, maybe I didn't express it when I meant conviction, but it's not just conviction over the idea. Like, if you believe in your idea, then you need to find a way else to sell it and speak it and broadcast it to the world. And like that, CEOs who cannot fundraise, that means something. It doesn't matter how good your idea is. If you don't know how, there's an art to fundraising. I work with founders on this all the time. And many of the first-time founders, they don't like to listen at this point at first. They always come back to me, tell me I'm right. Like, literally, I don't know if I'll say the name, but like, I have, a founder that I backed their seed round, and now they post Series B. They reached out to me. They're like, no way am I doing this round without getting you involved. Let's talk. Let's have a call. And to me, that was great. It's great to know that even though I now have another separate fund of my own, I do early stage, but they still want me to be involved. But I think it's because really working with founders on their fundraise, and when they realize that it is an art, and there is strategy behind it. It's not just like taking cards and saying, do you want? It's like, no, let's sit down. Let's map it out. Let's do a target list. Like I talk about it a lot. I've done webinars on it. I'm not the only VC that talks about that. It's really crucial. And so some people can be an Adam Neumann, and hats down to him on his ability to fundraise and get people behind him and being a leader. I think that's amazing. And I think that, there's a lot to learn from that. But most still like in the 20%, okay, not necessarily that 0.1%. Let's say even the 5 to 1% of founders, right? 10 to 1% of founders still need to come up with a strategy and build that out correctly. And hopefully you have good VCs around the table that help you do that.
Love it. So I'll say two things that are quite interesting here. So one of our clients actually is Ryan Breslow. You know Ryan? Mm-hmm. So for people who don't know, he was one of the youngest billionaires, based on his equity in Bolt, a big fintech giant. And Ryan is a master of fundraising guy, and he actually has a book on Amazon called Fundraising. So search Ryan Breslow Fundraising. It's actually a very great book on how you can leverage. You should check it out.
What does he say? Like, what are his few points?
His viewpoints is he talks a lot about like it's such a buzzword, but he goes into detail about how that actually works. Authenticity, but not like the way you like see it on LinkedIn, like real authenticity in terms of like the way you play.
Yeah.
And he teaches you how to think like a VC. What is the VC looking for?
That's it.
Right?
That's
it's
it.
like
That's part of the art. Knowing.
Think
who you're
about him, not
to.
you,
of
right?
Course, of course.
So this is, and this takes me to the other point, which is I find it extremely interesting. So like before Adam Neumann raised the $350 million from A16Z to Flow, people who are not well aware of how tech works and like the tech scene and startup landscape, they were like, Adam Neumann is such a fraud. Adam Neumann is such a blah, 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 all those kind of bullshit. And the insiders, every insider that I talk to, I'm talking to like 99%. Someone who's actually made money off tech told me like, this guy's a genius. I'm waiting to see what he's going to do next, like VCs and everything.
Yeah.
And when he raised like the 350 from A16Z, the tech scene split. Like 60% of people were like, I can't believe he raised it again.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe it happened. And then 40% were like, I can't believe I wasn't able to get into that round, right?
Yep.
And everybody that understands something about tech knows that like this is a world-class entrepreneur that if you're a VC, you just want him to take your money. Like no questions asked. And I find it so ridiculous. Like I find it so like, so after this happened, I went to people and I was like, how do people don't understand this? Like people who I conceive like high IQ, hyper intelligent people.
Right.
Like how do they don't understand that this is exactly the guy that VCs want, and that he also made lots of money and we work for lots of other people.
Right.
He just didn't make money for the last guy who put in the check.
But again, I think it goes
for SoftBank.
No, I think there's two things to say here. One, you asked me before we started recording, like what are the founders that I less like to invest in?
Right.
So I was gonna say, if you would ask me that if we didn't get to it, but like I really care about authenticity and integrity. And if you're not showing that authenticity, to Ryan Breslow's point, and you're not, and I mean, my integrity is everything. I care about my brand. I care about, being extremely like confidential, like what, mamash, like totally. And you want that also in the founders that you work with, and those that I don't want to work with, you realize that they are not authentic in how they handle their fundraise. They're not authentic with how they work with you. They're not authentic with even their investors in many ways. And that I think is a huge no-no. So I agree with Ryan. But I think to the point of, what you said before, knowing, I mean, this is important. I've said this to founders all the time. Fundraising and building that target list is not so different than building out your business development, like your partnership and customer list. Know who you're selling to and know what that looks like. For a venture fund, by the way, not every venture fund, I mean, I'm not going to get into like Adam Neumann specifically. I met him once. He was sitting and having breakfast with his grandmother, and he was very kind, and it was a nice breakfast. And, he seems like just like a good person. I'm sure that working with him was challenging. I mean, I know many people that have worked with him. I'm sure it was amazing and interesting and also challenging with many CEOs. That's how it is, the top CEOs, right? And that's fine. But I think what's important to take away from this too is that not many funds would invest necessarily in Adam Neumann. The bigger ones that have the capital to do, again, if you think also about the VC mindset, Andreessen knew him probably before, worked with him. Did they invest in him?
They didn't invest in him,
but I'm sure they built a long-term relationship, whether it was, Mark Andreessen or Ben Horowitz, right? And so I think that it's...
Do you want to know the story?
Sure.
Like, just because it's a very interesting one, I think, like for the audience and for you.
For sure.
So basically, Mark Andreessen they've never talked directly to Adam Neumann. after we were collapsed. Only after we were collapsed.
I believe that. I mean,
They've never talked
they
to each
had
other.
no reason to.
They had no reason to.
Yeah, they weren't part of the. They weren't on the cap table.
They weren't on the cap table. But you would think, But what did they do? They tracked him.
Of course.
They tracked him specifically through all of that. And then what happened is when Adam Neumann was in a low point after the whole media coverage, after the WeWork collapse, Mark and Jason raised a call to Adam and he told him, listen, don't give a shit about what others. We know what you're capable of. Let's build a connection, and that's how we did. So look how smart Mark was.
Of course
he waited for when
moment.
the stock was low, right, to build it up.
Listen, again, but that's why Mark Andreessen is
Mark Andreessen
and Sequoia. The founders of Sequoia I mean, like, these are people that saw things that many others did not.
Unbelievable.
And I think, by the way, that's the key. Like, I mean, when I try to pitch portfolio company or anything that I find interesting and others don't see it, I have my conviction, And so I think for Mark, in this case, I mean, everybody knows what Adam Neumann is capable of. And I think, I don't know what their investment thesis was, and it's a other, topic, but I think it's really interesting. And the important takeaway is what you said, is that you need to know who you're selling to, and you need to know how to sell to them, and do your homework beforehand. I mean,
who's your favorite investors? Like, I think like every guy, every person in every industry, he always has like some role models, or at least like a board of role models where he tries to combine them and make it.
Yeah.
Who's your kind of people in VC?
I mean, there's not just one.
Right.
Not at all. Wow. There's a lot of people that I really look up to. I mean, if it's just from like the fintech space, people like Matt Harris, who is a partner at Bain Capital, who are phenomenal. They're great. It's fun to work with them. It's fun to learn from them. They have such wonderful content. They're great people. He's invested in amazing companies over the years. But there could be somebody like, I obviously have a lot of respect and look up to like what Oren Zev built with Selah Ventures. And I was going to say Nicole Wishoff, what she's done since then. She's also solo GP, and she raised a fund called Wishoff Ventures. She's doing an amazing job. She's a new to VC. She was a former operator, but I think she's doing amazing stuff. I mean, really, there's a lot. I can't say there's one specific. I think also, look, I mean, when you look at what Gili Ranan has built for Cyber Starts and him with Lior and his other partners, there is, I mean, it's a different world, the cyber world, but like, I just think that building that brand and that network, and that founders want to go to you, and that you have really, a plan that it works, and it feeds itself in a very positive way. People won't necessarily agree with me on this, but I don't think we need any more generalist funds. I think that, I think, Alan Feld from Vintage wrote a great article about this, that in the end of the day, we are at the point right now where we can, I mean, I think especially, of everything that's happened in the past few months, cyber is just not enough. I understand the sex appeal. I understand the quick returns. Like, I get it. I'm not a cyber investor. I've done investments in the cyber space, and I'm in contact with cyber founders because of what I said. They want that. They want to work with me on like, how do I build that pipeline? I understand that. But when you think about long-term and scale and the possibility of Israel continuously being, second to Silicon Valley or to New York, let's say, we need to continue building on our strengths as an ecosystem and the talent. And that will be much more deep tech and defense, and it may be food tech and, things that are more broad, and obviously fintech, right? But much more broad. Well, again, fintech is data, it's fraud and identity, it's Web3, it's so broad. Like, we need to keep doing that. And I think generalist funds, what founders are realizing. Yeah,
they just go to the hot markets. Because they have the incentive to do so, which is
right. I get it. But I think in the end of the day, now that we have also a lot of big US funds, thankfully, building their offices here. Greylock is back. They were here years ago. Now they're back. Sequoia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Being local has to be much more than just like, I got access. It's important, but I think it's about access and being able to actually be helpful, and that help especially if you're coming from a specific industry.
Right.
I mean, like, there should be more B2C funds in Israel at the early stage. There should be deep tech. There should be bio. There are these things, but not enough. If you look at the majority of funds in Israel, and they're the best, generalist funds there are. Some of them globally are great generalist funds. But I think it's really important to have that expertise. Like, I mean, even Bessemer, I've done a few co-investments with them over the years. We're even in I invested in Alloy in the pre-seed. It's $1 billion fintech. And Bessemer is there. And like, if you think about, Adam Fisher, who's amazing, I don't think he would invest in Melio without having Charles Birnbaum at Bessemer, who only does fintech for Bessemer, taking a look. That's crucial. You need to have that. Not because Adam Fisher is not a genius, which he is, not an amazing investor, but I think that's the importance of specific industries having that domain expertise. And I think Israel is mature enough, given we have, like I said, so many billion-dollar companies, so much global successes at this point. I mean, hats down to all the successful generalists. I think it's great. But I think we can mature into actually honing into specific sectors and coming in strong and building that brand.
I have 2 more questions for you, and you've been super pleasant with your time.
Thank you. Likewise.
Productivity. So you do a lot of things, because what I like about you is you're the modern VC, modern operator / investor. So I see you on LinkedIn, I see you on events, I see you doing lots of stuff, working with the portfolio companies. What's the productivity method, or kind of like the guideline to how you structure your day? Is there some sort of a playbook that helps you stay consistent and get results?
It's a really good question. I am trying to build an art around that myself. One thing that's really been helpful, and it's funny because I think it was Ryan Hoover, who was the former founder of Product Hunt, and now he has a fund called the Weekend Fund. But he also takes out a lot of data for emerging managers like myself. So, people that are around Fund 1, Fund 2, I believe up to Fund 3 are still defined emerging managers. And his last article, which was so spot on, is like, if you're an emerging manager, get a good EA. So 100%, no joke, having, the people around you that are your wartime supporters,
Right.
that they're really there with you, like having, a good CFO is such a help. Like, you need that, whether it's they work, inside the fund or they do hourly work. You need to have a good EA that helps you. You need to have a good admin, and you need to have a great tech stack. So like, I can say like a lot of emerging managers and funds in general have like, they use ChatGPT and AI. Of course I do as well. But like, in the end of the day, I need to have a lot of people around the table that help me with the things that I shouldn't be dealing with. I am best at investing. I am best at choosing the right teams. I am best at working with the teams that I invest with in my portfolio. And that's where I want to spend my time, in finding the best people to invest in and then just helping them whatever I can. So to be most productive to me is that whatever is, I would say, necessary but time consuming, and necessary but operational, get people that you trust. And I don't even think I delegate enough. I have a wonderful part-time EA. I want her to be more than that.
Who's the one I talked to, right? Stacy?
Don't say her name.
No.
She's mine. But yes, she's wonderful. But I think it's really important to have somebody really great that works with you, that will give you the time and will be available. And I think it's and getting, like, I'm thinking now about getting an analyst. I think it's really important to have that. I don't have a set day. I do have this though. I know which days that I'm working at a co-working space, and those are the days I have my meetings. And I know which days I'm sitting at home, and I know which days I may be at a cafe. Like, there's certain days of my schedule that I know what's going to happen in those days, and then I structure the day accordingly, which is really helpful.
Are you like a to-do list person, or are you more like just like?
No, I'm a visual person, and I need the gratification of crossing something off. I need to know that I've done that.
So you have like an actual notebook?
Yeah, I have one in my bag right here. I was going to take it out and, yes, I write. There's something about mind to hand that means a lot. I do obviously have a great CRM too,
right,
that helps me manage a lot of this stuff. But I think the most important thing, I think, for any emerging manager is to have a really good tech stack that helps you. If you can automate things, awesome. Like, Alex Oppenheimer from Verissimo is a great emerging manager and a great person in general. He uses like Airtable for everything, and he talks about it. Me personally, I don't like Airtable. I don't know why. It doesn't work for me.
Right.
It doesn't. I think I work with a CRM that works for me. I know how to structure it. It could be better for sure. But I like writing down tasks. sometimes I put them in the computer. I like having my EA tell me things that I forget. And so a lot of times that helps. One thing that I am missing, and I wish this was done, and I haven't seen this yet, and I've asked other emerging managers, I would love there to be a system where the portfolio could go in, know what they need from me, their specific asks. I mean, you could say it's via email, but it's not the same thing. Some people do this through Zapier and the like, maybe. But I would love just to have, whether it's through my CRM or something else, they say, Adi, I need access to XYZ. I want a connection to this. They note that in, and then I get that information and I track it. You could say it's like Monday and all that stuff, but it's not the same because Monday's for me to track. Sometimes you can have somebody internal, like I could do that through them.
You wanted, okay, so yeah.
I want there to be a platform with when I now have 6 companies I've invested in, hopefully doing very soon. Inshallah, I hope so. And then, I'm going to get to 22 investments, 23 potentially. That's a lot of companies.
Right.
And I want to be able, but I want them to know that when they need something from me, they WhatsApp me, they call me, they email me.
A16Z has a process for that. I'll send you a blog post.
A16Z has a lot of money, and they have a whole team that helps with those
But
things.
they have a specific process.
Okay.
Like a machine that they build.
Internally?
Yeah.
I'll ask them. I'm not familiar with it, but I think that something like that, like, again, some people have built like Zapier ways to do this, or Airtable. I could do that. Do a form on Airtable, have them come in, fill it out, they ask, get to me. But I think there needs to be a flow that makes more sense. I have not yet seen that through, CRM is internal. A lot of things are internal. I think that would be helpful. I don't know if that answered your question.
It did.
I try to be as productive as possible. Yeah. It's an art.
Yes. My last question, favorite book?
Ooh. Favorite book?
Are you more of like a business reader or like a fiction reader?
Right now, fiction, because I feel like since I was a kid, I'm very creative, and like I dance and I sing and I like to draw, and I'm very creative type, but I don't really have a lot of that so much in I dance once a week, but I don't have so much of that in my day to day. So when I read something, I read like total fictional stuff.
Those fictional stuffs have lots of insights, more than business books, I believe.
Sometime, but I think you asked me this once, a favorite podcast, and I told you Spiritually Hungry, which I think is phenomenal, and it's like tidbits of like just things to think about. I don't know if I don't know. What's your favorite book? Maybe give me some ideas. I haven't read anything good lately.
There's many favorite books. One of them is The Fountainhead.
Yeah.
Ian
But
Rand.
that's like, hey, that's a huge book. No, it's a good one. I'm trying to think of like books I've read lately. I like also, the ones that I think were really interesting was like, there's a book called, I think it's called like The Earth. It's like about ancient China, like
Really?
that. I'm reading now something called The Maidens, which is like something has to do with like, it's like ancient Greece, but in nowadays time, it's like a murder mystery. And there's a book that I don't know what it is in English, but it's a wonderful book that I really liked back in the day. In Hebrew, it's called Shvuat Rachel. Have you read it?
No.
It's a book that also connects between like past. It's like talking about the past, but bringing it to now, like to the present day.
What, like the Bible?
No, not so much like that, but things that incorporate like
By the way, the Bible is my favorite book.
That's a really good. The Bible is a great book. There's a lot.
It's more than a book for me, yes, but it's
I agree with you.
It's more than a book for me. It's the Bible.
I agree with you. There's a lot of things, but I think I like more the even the name of Selah is something very spiritual. I don't know if I told you.
No.
So I'll get to that, but I think for me the Bible, I like when the scholars would take the Bible and give their expressions.
Like Jordan
to it. Peterson
stuff.
No, I mean like the rabbi, the rabbis of like in Spain, and like when they give I think they're those things are I think really interesting. But yeah, I'm a very spiritual person as well. And I actually love Judaism, like how it was raised. I think it's beautiful on many levels. Not when it's black or white. I think the ability to be Jewish in your own how you see fit, I think is beautiful. And Selah, the reason why I chose the name is two things, because in Hebrew, Selah can mean two things, right? Selah spelled one way is a rock, right? So it's the basis, something that is unmovable and steady. Selah spelled another way actually has many different meanings. It's written 73 or 75 times in the Talmud, I believe.
Really?
And like, say Amen Selah. right? And so it has many meanings. One of the meanings that I read that I connected to was that it means to lift and elevate. And so I love the idea of being that rock and that basis, that steady basis, but then helping companies get to the next level. And so that's why I chose the name.
Love it.
Yeah.
Adi Levanon, you've been a pleasure.
You too.
It
Thank
was
you
so
so
fun.
much.
Yeah, you got people follow her on LinkedIn.
For sure.
Adi
Follow on
Levanon.
LinkedIn, reach out, Twitter. I love when people ping me.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.